Good evening, and thank you for tuning into the Checkpoint. I hope that you've made it home safe from Drive Through Thursday and were able to pick up your communion for this upcoming Sunday. Tonight, Pastor Chris welcomes Sean Duro for discussion on personal finances during COVID season. As always, this discussion is led by you, so please, if you have any questions, we ask that you submit them at this time. While doing so, we would like to remind you to join us this Saturday for Family Ties. We will begin a new series entitled Committed. Also, don't forget to check us out on Sunday for Antioch Unplugged. Pastor Chris will begin a new series entitled Into All Generations. Of course, if you've missed past content, please do visit our YouTube page to view on-demand videos. Without further ado, let's join Pastor Chris and welcome Sean Duro.
What's up, family? Welcome to another edition of the Checkpoint. I'm so excited that you joined us, and I pray you've had a good day. I'm so excited to continue conversation as we seek to make sure that we are healthy and stable in every area of life, not just spiritually, but we've talked about the mental, the physical, the educational last week, and today we're going to talk about the financial. It is so important during this season that we are being good stewards. That's what our Bible study series is about. And today we're just going to talk practically about some financial stewardship, so that you know how to best take care of the resources that God has given you. I'm so excited to welcome our special guest, Sean DeRoe. He's here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor.
For coming to hang out with us. Sean is the expert in this area. So real quick, as we hop into it, let the people know what you do and what your ministry is.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to speak to the flock. I love doing what I call helping people create a wealth shift in their life. I'm an investment consultant, been in the business for about 27 years, and I get a chance to help ministries, individuals, couples, as well as small businesses with their finances. So obviously, it's important all the time, but it's extremely important what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So I really believe that we're in a very pivotal point and moment that we need to make sure that we are protecting our finances and what God has given us. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's a needed conversation. So as you are kind of aware, we're all going through this COVID crisis together.
Right.
What are some of the big things you said, especially like right now, is really important that we focus on this? What are some of the biggest pitfalls you're seeing right now as it relates to the wealth shift in the wrong direction?
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest pitfalls that you see?
Well, first of all, let's talk about what's going on right now. COVID-19 has created not only illness in our people in terms of over 1 million cases, 60,000 deaths. So I pray that no one's listening that has been affected, but if so, we'll certainly keep them in prayers. Mm-hmm. But it's also crippled our economy. Mm-hmm. It's made our entire economy sick. By the way, I think we did the right thing by choosing health and humanity over capitalism and shutting things down. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what they did was created a lot of economic illness. Mm-hmm. So now we have seen a contraction. So, Pastor, as we speak right now, we've just stepped into, it just was announced, 30 million Americans who have filed for unemployment. I mean, think about that. Now, if you compare and contrast from 2009 coming off the housing recession to the middle of February of this year, the U.S. actually created 20 million jobs, and it took 6 weeks to have unemployment of 30 million people. So what does that mean? That means that as mentioned, we are now in a contraction state. And what I'm seeing is that people are not either pivoting the correct way, and this is not a time to panic, it is a time to pivot. And they need to do that by saying, hey, you know what, how in the world can I play defense? And I'm telling people right now, this is the time while we're in the valley to prepare on the other side, because there's going to be tremendous opportunities, but you have to right now play what I consider defense. So let me just say this, Pastor. I always believe there's 4 pillars to wealth. The first pillar is that you have to, first of all, make the money, right? If you ain't making the money, you're not in the game. But once you make the money, now you have to learn how to multiply the money. I believe that everything God gives us, he expects an increase on.
Hold on real quick. What was the Bible study lesson yesterday? We talked about the multiplication principle. That's the exact point. Everything that God gives us, he expects us to multiply. That's
Absolutely.
good.
He expects an increase. We know what Jesus did to the fig tree when it didn't produce something.
Yes, sir.
We understand that the 3 servants, the one that buried it, all he did was saved it, but yet the master literally gave his to the 2 that was producing something. So you first have to make it, then you multiply it. Then the other 2 is that you now have to learn how to maintain the money. So it's not how much we make and grow, it's how much we keep. And we live in a society, unfortunately, a lot of people are living from hand to mouth. 78% of America, unfortunately, lives paycheck to paycheck.
Wow.
And it is said that the average person right now, if they had a $400 emergency that popped up, they would have to put it on their credit card.
Wow.
Because they don't have $400 in their bank. And that's not a judgment. That says that if we're not maintaining it, then can God trust us with the last pillar, which is the management? So you have to make it, you have to multiply it, you have to maintain it, but you can't do any of those 3 unless you learn how to manage it. See, managing it is the most important key part of it, because God will only give you what you're able to manage.
Yes, sir.
You know, I just talked to, as a financial advisor and a consultant, I just talked to an elderly man who is wealthy. Let's just put it like that. And he is trying to work on his estate, and he has 2 twin sons. He has twin sons, and one he says is very responsible. The other is irresponsible, and he's torn because he wants to be able to leave both of his sons equal the amount, but he knows that one, if he leaves the money to, it's a blessing. The other, it'll be a burden. Same father, same money, same love, but one is a blessing, one is a burden. And God sees the same thing with us. Can you handle the thing that he wants to give us? So it's the management. So why do I say all that? Because in my humble opinion, with this economic contraction, we're now in a situation where God is saying it's time to play defense. The first 2 I talked about, the making and the multiplying, that's offense. We just came out of the longest expansion in history from 2009 to the middle of February of this year, longest global expansion in history, longest bull stock market in history, and then we ran into this COVID-19 crisis. And in literally 3 to 6 weeks, we ran into this. Everything's changed. So now they're talking about a recession. Now they're talking about potentially depression. And I don't put that out there to create any fear, because we know that God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but he did give us a spirit of common sense. So now we have to say, what can we do to prepare now that we're in this valley?
Listen, if that few minutes wasn't enough to make you share this video and tell everybody right now they need to be hopping on to pay attention, I don't know what you're listening to. Right now is a good opportunity for you to share this video, invite people in, because this conversation is really needed for this season. And so we got to talk about it. So what I really want to think through is, let's think through those stages, kind of, fleshed out a little bit. So to make the money. So what's so interesting about this is a lot of the conversation about the reopening of different states and how that's going to affect the economy. So for some people who have been able to work from home or do certain things, they cool, they getting their check, they all right. But then there are those who haven't been able to make money during this season. The hourly employees that work in the malls or the retail. So when it comes to making money right now, it seems like it just depends on what end of the spectrum you sit on. What are some tips right now as it relates to just the very basic fundamental of making money during this crisis?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's one of my 5 defensive strategies, and I alluded to, since we don't have basketball right now.
Oh man,
my goodness, what? So I'm going to use the analogy of basketball. I believe that when you're doing basketball, the key is in defense. So to answer your question, I believe that you have to right now learn, you must start honing and developing your competitive advantage. And what do I mean by that? Because right now we're in a season where we're contracted, right? So we can't go outside, we're quarantined, we can't do the things that we used to do. And here's what most people are doing. They, instead of scaling up, they're numbing up. They're numbing up on Tiger King, TikTok videos, IG battles. And I'm not knocking any of those things because I've enjoyed all those things as well. But this is the time, Pastor, that people need to be literally working on their craft. We're going to come out of this opportunity with so many opportunities on the other side, but those who are ready and prepared. So you're saying, well, what does that mean by right now? Well, we are still in what we call a gig economy. So you now have to shift with the economy. So right now, where you may have been working in the mall and that mall is shut down, now you have to shift and say, well, where are the opportunities? Amazon has hired 100,000 people. You have a lot of opportunities out here in terms of what's shifting right now, and you have to be coherent to these things because money is still flowing. You just have to go and look and see where it is. But here's what, again, going back to, you have to develop your craft. Because right now, yes, you need the money, but more importantly, when you come out of this, because I'll talk about some other defensive things that can really sustain you through right now. See, when the government shut us down, they said, we're going to help the average person come up out of this. So if you're struggling, you may not be tapping all of your defensive strategies that you can tap. But this is the time that you lean on some things, and at the same time, you hone and master your craft. In other words, I always tell people this. This is the opportunity that you have to, in my humble opinion, concentrate on your tags and not titles. Titles are this. When you are, and I don't knock anybody who's going after a master's degree to become that supervisor or an executive director or an entrepreneur, whatever title you want to use, but that's not what's going to make you the money. What's going to make you the money are the tags, the TAGS, your talents, your abilities, your gifts, and your skills. The things that God has put inside of you, if you hone on those, if you cut on those, if you develop those right now, you will come out of this much better than you were going in. Wow. And this is an incredible opportunity to come in and make the money. But that may not still answer the question of saying, yeah, but what about right now? So I'll use another defensive analogy. Right now, then, you need to be and use team players. Don't play defense by yourself. In other words, seek the opportunities that are out here. As mentioned, we all know, for those who qualify, the government sent majority of people the stimulus check, right? So, of course, if your adjusted gross income is under $75,000 as a single person, you get $1,200. If you're married and your adjusted gross income is $150,000 or less, you get $2,400. If you have children under the age of 17 or dependents, you get an additional $500. That's money that's coming in that you don't have to do anything about, anything to get. But there's other things out here right now that's sitting on the table that you do have to get out here and do. A lot of people don't realize that right now, Dallas, the city of Dallas will start providing a housing, mortgage, and rent COVID-19 assistance program starting May 4th for those who need it. So again, if you've lost that job, if you don't have that income coming in, there are some resources that you can go to the city of Dallas, and you know, based on your income, I think it's around $66,000 to $70,000. They'll help you for the next 6 months with your rent. Wow. There's also a lot of folks. I mentioned 30 million people are filing for unemployment, but there are a lot of people that still have not stepped into the unemployment and taken full advantage of that.
That's true.
So you look at, again, a person that has left there or been furloughed or been laid off, and unfortunately, they say, well, what do I do? And first thing I ask them, are you taking full advantage of the stimulus unemployment? Because not only can you go to the state Texas unemployment, but on top of that, they're going to give you an additional $600 a week for that stimulus through July. For most people who have been working at the malls, who have been doing gig economies, driving Ubers or whatever, you will make more money in unemployment in the next 3 to 4 months than you would have made on your job. Most people. So there's a lot of opportunities to make the money right now, and obviously, again, you hone your own skills and again, get out here and quote unquote hustle and do your gig economy, but also be a team player and take advantage of some of the things that are on the table.
That's so important to be aware of the opportunities that exist. And I got to speak to it. And, don't be so prideful that you don't reach out and use the resources that God has blessed us with that are going on all over the place. Listen, y'all submit your questions. We'll be able to catch some questions if you jump in and submit them. So we're paying attention, and we're going to be available to answer some questions as they come in. So talking about making the money. All right, now, how do we effectively maintain what we make during this season? Everybody's spending all their money on toilet paper, and there's a meat shortage, so they going up and trying to buy all the chicken and
Exactly.
So what do we do to maintain it and be fiscally responsible during this season?
So important to be fiscally responsible because God expects that from us. But to maintain it, again, I'll use another basketball analogy. Don't put in or play your reserves. And when I say don't play your reserves, I'm talking about your cash reserves. Pastor Chris, this is an opportunity for us to right now hold on as much as we can to our coins and stack them as high as we can. Now, people are saying, well, I have to still live. No, I'm not saying you don't live and spend on the essentials.
Right.
I'm saying this is not the time that you go out and frivolously spend or you buy things that are not needed. So, again, we talked about the stimulus checks coming in. You stack as much of that as you can. You keep as much of that in your reserves as you can. We talked about other opportunities out here. Don't go out here because here's what will happen. People will say, look, in this quote-unquote potential depression that we may be stepping into, and God knows I hope that's not the case, there will be what people would consider great opportunities to go out here and buy a car, buy a refrigerator, buy these things. It's not the time to do it right now.
Yeah.
This is the time to hold on to your reserves. Don't play them. And oh, by the way, this is also the time to start cutting some fat in your house. I wrote a book, and I bought some books here for you, Pastor. I wrote a book called The Consumption Trap. And this book talks about what I call the C's of consumption, the letter C of consumption. And I show people if in 90 days, if you just start cutting and making some strategies and arrangements around these things, that you can easily reduce them by 25%. Stuff like your credit cards, your cell phone, your cable, your catering costs or the cost of eating out, your college loans, your cars, again, your children, spending the money on them, what I call your conveniences, your crib. I can go on, but these are so many things that a lot of folks don't realize. If you just tweak a few things, you'll start cutting around the edges and you'll start building your reserves up without you even going in and making money. You just do it by good stewardship.
Wow.
So you can, again, start maintaining it by really getting serious and saying, look, I'm going to spend only on my essentials. And why do I say that? Because you want to have that seed money because there will be opportunities. This is why they say cash is king. There will be an opportunity where if you have the seed money and you have the cash to do something about it, you'll have incredible amount of leverage on the other side.
And you know what's so interesting is I was having a conversation with somebody who was like, just the fact that I hadn't been able to eat out as much, I looked up and realized I had saved more money not being able to eat out, not having to fill up my tank to go to work, not having, so how do I, manage that well? Here's a couple of questions that we got coming in.
Okay.
So, we get this money, these resources, this unemployment, whatever. I realize I've been saving. What are some good ideas to steward that money, especially if it's more than what I've been used to?
Yeah, so you're getting all this windfall of money. As mentioned, don't go out and spend it. And I can't sit here and tell you what to go in and invest in because I don't know who you are. But if I can give you this model, every dollar, this is what got me and my family out of almost $200,000 in debt years ago when we started doing it God's way. So every dollar, and again, I'm sure I'm talking to a lot of you that already know this, but I would encourage you to do this. Every dollar you have, pull a dime out and give it to your father. Obviously, that's tithing. And then you take the next dime out of that dollar and you give it to your future. That's saving. And then you take another dime out of that dollar and you put it towards your freedom. That may be paying your debt off or creating a business or some type of entrepreneurial where you can create multiple streams of income. And then that next that next 65 cents of that dollar, you put that towards your family. That's what's the cost of maintaining your family, paying your bills, keeping everybody up to par. And then there's one nickel that's left in that dollar, you put it towards your fun. I believe God wants us to have fun. So you put it towards your faith, 10 cents, another 10 cents towards your future, another 10 cents towards your freedom, 65 cents to your family, and then the last nickel to your fun. Now, within those buckets, it just depends on who you are, your risk tolerance, and how comfortable you are in terms of if there's opportunities for you to invest, and that's where I help people as well. But if you first of all start with telling your money what to do and where to go versus it telling you what it wants to do, then you're in control and you'll start creating wealth.
Are y'all hearing this? This is, listen, have you shared this video yet? Some people need to hear this. Some people need to hear this. This is healthy. This is stuff we don't talk about it enough in the church. And I knew when I told y'all we was going to talk finance, some of y'all got scared and started thinking about, the church trying to grab my money. No, we're actually trying to help you get financially free. So share this video. This is a needed conversation. Here's another conversation or question. Is it smart to take money out of your 401k without penalty just for cushion?
Yeah, that's a great question because that's another part of what the government has allowed us to utilize now that we've been shut down. So if you absolutely have to, you now can pull money out of your 401k, 403b, whatever you have, and you're not penalized on it, and you can even push that repayment for a year. So I can't tell that individual who's asking the question if it's smart for them because I don't know their financial situation, but I can tell you that is an opportunity and an option now versus you struggling. So I've told clients, yeah, that may make sense for you, and I've told other clients, no, there are better options. But just know that indeed is an option where in the past you would have had to start paying that back immediately, or you take money out and do what they call a distribution, a coronavirus-related distribution, that if your company allows it, you may not even have to pay it back. Now, you'll have to pay taxes on it, but you can pull that out. In the past, if you were under the age of 59 and a half, they would penalize you 10%. That's been, again, lifted based on where we are right now.
Right. So it's good that whoever you are, that you're aware of that. You said be wise based on your own decision. Is there a possibility, here's another question, of a run on banks similar to what occurred during the Great Depression?
Yeah, that's I've heard that, and there's fear on that. I don't think that is, because here's one thing that we did not get in the Great Depression that we're getting here is the wind of the Federal Reserves.
Right.
$2.4 trillion initially that was put out there, and they did these paycheck protection program loans that a lot of people took advantage of, small businesses as well as ministries. They did other things that obviously stimulus checks. They put another $2.3 trillion that helped corporations, and they're buying their high debt, which is basically junk bonds. And then they put an additional $310 billion in that second round of the paycheck protection loan. So all of that to say, yes, is it possible? Anything's possible, but the Federal Reserve, and they even announced it yesterday, they will absolutely do whatever it takes to keep this economy going, and they can print money out of the air, and they're doing it.
Right. Right. So you mentioned something about the payroll protection programs and small businesses. Small business owners are in a really, really rough, spot depending on where they sit right now.
Right.
What is some of the best advice you have for small business owners who are trying to navigate these waters right now? Entrepreneurs or just, those who've kind of launched out on, you heard the Lord tell you to start that business and then here comes this. So what is some good advice you would give to them right now?
Well, obviously, again, going back to that, being a team player, you take advantage of the things that are on. So we just talked about one thing. Look, as a small business owner, one thing I've been encouraged that this whole nation has stepped up. There's so many programs out there from organizations and companies that are able to do it. For example, if you're a small business and you have 5 employees up to, I think, 50 employees, Facebook, for example, gave out a loan that you don't, it's not even a loan, it's a grant. That it's basically like the payroll protection program loan that they're basically saying you don't have to use it on Facebook ads, you don't have to use it with us. We just want to make sure that these small businesses are sustained. So that's just one example. I can probably give you another 10 examples. Here's what a lot of small businesses, here's what a lot of people must do. You have to do the work. Like you said, Pastor, you can't, you have to move the ego out the way, and you have to step out there and say, what's out here, what's available. If you need to get some help to help you prepare and position yourself and fill out that paperwork, then make sure you're doing it. But there are so many options and opportunities out here for small businesses to take advantage of that are like grants and some loans that are very low interest rates. I didn't talk about the economic injury disaster loan that are out there that it's not even 2% interest, that they're not even running credit checks. They're giving that to small businesses to help you sustain yourself so you can get through this and well beyond. So it's tough. Obviously, if you're that one person entrepreneur that started your business, this is where, again, COVID-19 has absolutely affected your business. So make sure that you're taking full advantage of the things that are on the table that you probably wouldn't have received in the past. Entrepreneurs didn't get unemployment in the past.
Right.
So even if you're somewhat still maintaining and making some income, even if it's reduced, still take full advantage of that. Again, in Texas, and don't quote me on this, but I'm giving you an estimate. In Texas, that would be roughly, if you were doing unemployment, roughly about anywhere between $3,500 to $4,000 a month. That's not bad for something that was not even on the table for entrepreneurs in the past.
Right.
So just take advantage of it and look at those opportunities that's out there.
This is so good. So we've talked about making, we've talked about maintaining. Now, what about multiplying? So this is what's interesting, you know, at least for me, as I've been paying attention. It's like stocks are cheap. You know, you can buy stock and stuff for cheap and things like that. But you talked about what your risk, you know, aversion is, how you feel about taking risk or things like that. So what are some simple ways to think through multiplying your funds or having your funds work for you during this season?
Yeah, I think the simplest way, if I'm thinking about how do you multiply funds right now, first of all, you have to have the funds to multiply them, right? So once you have the funds to multiply them, now you have to understand what is it that you want to use as a building block to increase it. So I work in the stock market, so I'm an investment consultant. I do stock investments. Everybody doesn't have the propensity to say, you know what, I don't know how to trade in stocks, and that's fine because there's other ways to actually build wealth. And so I would say, first of all, align yourself with what you're comfortable with, or, as mentioned, we're in a season right now where you have the opportunity to learn. So again, I've been in the stock market for 20 plus years, and right now I'm taking a class to hone my skills, to even be better in trading stocks. But whatever it is, here's a way you multiply your money. You do it smart, and you do it with a team. So in other words, I would tell folks, don't do it by yourself. If I wanted right now, Pastor Chris, to start investing in real estate and having some type of income generating property, that's not my forte. Right. I would now have to go out here and get with a person who understands and knows what they're doing. So that may mean I have to hire a coach, or we barter our expertise. I help them with the investments. They help me with the real estate. But the bottom line is that I'm going to, first of all, understand what I'm comfortable with, learn as much as I can about it, and then slowly step into it with the help of what I call a maven or a mentor. A maven is nothing more than an expert in their field. So if you go into that mindset and say, look, I'm going to pull this person along with me and have them show me how to do this, you're going to be okay. But don't expect to get rich overnight either.
Right.
That's the key. I mean, look, there are some opportunities out here right now, and I pray that I'm wrong. I think the opportunities are only going to grow as we push ourselves into this and out of this this curve and this crisis. There's going to be some companies that will not come back from this. There's going to be some companies that will file bankruptcy, that will liquidate. There's going to be some companies that right now that are right at the trough, that when the economy comes back around, they're going to spike up. So you could, if you're an investor, there's going to be housing right now or real estate that's going to dip. There's going to be other opportunities out here. So you just got to know and find your lane, and then get somebody to help you with it, and then you'll start multiplying it.
Yeah, somebody just asked, are there classes to learn stock trading or things like that? And if so, what are some of those resources that you would
I mean, I don't
recommend?
endorse anybody, any particular company or classes, but I would encourage you to just get on get on Google and just type in stock trading classes for beginners, and you'll get a few classes that'll come up, and just kind of peruse through them. A lot of good ones will give you maybe 1 or 2 classes free just to get, your feet wet and see if you like their style and their mode of training, and then determine if that's where you want to go. But this is the time where, before you put a penny in, this is the time you learn information and stuff like that, so you can indeed create a lot of wealth.
Yo, are y'all getting this? This is good stuff. I love the fact that we're on demand, so you can go on YouTube when this is over and take some notes, because there's been a lot of really, really important information. So you actually referenced it a little bit, and you have some books. So I actually want to leave some time just for you to talk about your journey, your story, your books, and stuff like that. So, of course, you talked about what makes you an expert in your field is how long you've been in it, but you also referenced a personal story and testimony about this. So speak to that for a second. Give some people some hope with your story.
Well, it's a story that I don't like sharing, but I love sharing because it's the reality of it. I always tell people, at one point I was broken. We were battling bills, bad credit, and bankruptcy. I tell folks we were about almost $200,000 in debt. And it all changed the day I was robbed in broad daylight. And I always use that story, and people say, wow, you were robbed in broad daylight? Then I say, but it was a voluntary robbery because I put the gun up to my own head. I stepped into a payday loan, and I was desperate. I just stepped into the 2 most responsible jobs that God had given me up to date, and that was a husband and a father. And I was failing at both because I couldn't take care of my baby girl as well as being a bad husband financially. So when I stepped into that payday loan, because I needed some quick money, and I remember writing out a $500 cash advancement. I was getting paid that following week. I didn't have the money. I gave him $500 for him to cash the following week. He counted off 4 crisp $100 bills and slid it to me. And I asked him, I said, where's the rest of the money? He said, well, that's the cost of doing business. He took $100 from me that he was going to keep for himself. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you don't have much, that felt like $1 million.
Right.
But if you play that all the way out, Pastor, that was about a 400% annual percentage rate. And I remember going to my car and crying like a baby and saying, I can't live like this anymore. So it really was the turning point. So God took me from that moment, and I literally just sat myself in a library at the time, and online wasn't that popular, so we were in libraries. I was learning everything I can about finances. I started, again, here's the sad thing, I was an educated brother. I had my master, or I was on my way to getting my master's at the time, so it wasn't that the intellect wasn't there, it's the stewardship that wasn't there. So that's what really started my journey, and I started getting serious, and I got a mentor that really poured into me, and I started seeing how he was doing it. And over the time, we built ourselves out of debt. I started again now teaching what I learned, and I started helping so many people around the country. Now I get a chance to literally go around the country and help and serve a lot of folks, teach them how to do what I call create a wealth shift. And I believe that every one of us has innately the power to create a wealth shift. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to become a millionaire.
Right.
Matter of fact, this is bigger than money, because if it's all that you have is money, you're not very wealthy.
Right.
But the wealth I'm talking about goes well beyond it, but a part of it is about money. And the Bible says that money answereth all things. So in this environment that we're in, we need money to take care of ourselves, our families, the kingdom. So all that to say, I over the years have created and wrote a few books, taught a lot of classes, have a lot of concepts. Again, I teach a class, as I mentioned, called The Wealth Shift, that shows you how to take principles and build wealth over my journey and my experience. Not that everybody will have my experience. Right. I teach a class called The Consumption Trap, as I mentioned, showing people how to reduce particular wealth inside their house. And the most important book, probably the one I wrote, was called The Money Monsters. And this is showing how money is stolen away from us from what I call the 7 creepy eyes, things that start with the letter I, like isolation and ignorance and irresponsibility and illness and inheritance, inflation.
My goodness.
So I can go on and talk about that, and I love talking about that because I walk that same path, and I can show folks how to overcome that. So my story is a simple story. I don't profess to know it all. I'm not even close to where I want to be, but God has used me as well as my background and my story, and now my expertise to really help people. In
That's
the financial
incredible.
area.
And I can attest to this because, we'll go to these conferences all over the place, and every little conference we go to, Sean's right there with us. So that's a incredible story. Listen, if you have, okay, so cool. If y'all have any more questions and comments, feel free to submit them. We don't have a whole lot more time, but the people are like, all right, how can we get in touch with you? How can we find out about your resources, your books, your classes, that sort of thing?
Well, I tell you what, if anybody wants to reach out to me, it's Shawn, SHAWN, @ the Wealth Shift Project. Every year, especially if you feel like you really want to concentrate on getting out of debt, every year I have a challenge with folks, and hundreds sign up, and I send out the Consumption Trap Challenge. And there's videos I send out to folks who literally want to, and I typically send them out once a week. I can send them all out to you if you want to do that. So folks can work on, again, strategies and tips to reduce their debt. And then again, just reach out to me, Shawn @ thewealthshiftproject.com, if you want to have any information on the books or anything else. I'll be more than happy to provide that information to you.
So I think that just got pinned in the comments, so you can go check that email out. And now listen, and I need y'all to look at me real good. If we set this up for a conference or something, and I ask Sean to come in and teach this stuff, y'all better show up. All right, so we gonna put a pin there. We got some things that we've been talking about and praying about as it relates to our own conferences, and that would be something that'd be really important for us to talk about. And so I'm glad you all are interested in those resources. Make sure you reach out to that email. Take part in that challenge. I mean, those are small things that you can do to start to eliminate some of your bad spending habits and start to create that wealth shift that he talked about. I love another part of your story, or probably the central part of it, is you said it's not about education, it's about stewardship.
That's right.
And that's one of the things that we've been talking about over the last few weeks with Bible study, is just stewarding your life well, being faithful with what it is that God has given you, not just your money, but your talents, your family, your whatever it is. And so talk a little bit about that, how the scripture helped you to become a better steward.
Right. Well, the scripture was everything, because again, God, he basically said, when you're tired of doing it your way, and you're tired of kicking your knee up against a rock and stumping your head, then follow me in my word. So I said, okay, God, I'll do it exactly your way. I'll do whatever it is you call me. So again, he taught me that little principle that I gave you on the dollar bill. He showed me, and oh, by the way, God has now blessed us to pull a lot more than a dime out of that dollar. And not that I say that to pat myself on the back. I'm saying that to give God the glory, to show you, if you do it God's way, he'll exceed what even he told you and your expectations, because now we pull a lot more than that dime out of that dollar to give to our Father. But with that being said, he said, okay, I'm going to teach you the 5 things that you can do with money. There's only 5 things that you can do with money. Now, once you make the money, now, again, I've been in conferences and I've asked people, what can you do with money? And people raise their hand and they'll give me 5 to 100 different answers. And I say, you can only do 5 things with money. You can give it, you can save it, you can spend it, you can invest it, or you can protect it. And God says, I'm going to teach you these 5 things that you can do with money. And once you get these 5 things in order, then you will absolutely change your financial situation. Bible says that we should all be like that ant, right? In Proverbs 6:6-8. It has no commander, no overseer, but yet it collects its food in the summer, so it will have provisions in the winter. Again, as an investment consultant, I help a lot of people dealing with retirement. And you approach retirement one of 2 ways. In my experience, people either approach it with anticipation or apprehension. And the reason why they approach it with apprehension is because they didn't prepare in the summer for winter. And God says, I want you to understand the importance of saving. But then he said, it doesn't stop right there, because that's just where you plant the seed. Now you have to put the money in and say, okay, you know what? Do you invest it? We already talked about Matthew 25:14, the parable of the master and the 3 servants. He gave 1 5, 1 2, and 1 1, but he gave them, and you know this, Pastor, he gave it based on one word.
Yes, sir.
He gave it to them based on their ability. So the Bible says if you have the ability to handle it, to grow it, to invest it, to put it to use, I'll give you more.
Yes,
so
sir.
God says, I'm looking at you, and I'm going to make sure that the one that has 5, you have the responsibility to multiply it. The one that has 2, you have the responsibility to multiply it. And the one that has 1, even though he did it, he saved it. He didn't waste it, didn't blow it. It was taken from him. So all that to say, God is looking at us, and he wants us to have more ability. So God said, once you have more ability, I'll give you more. So I started working on my ability. But then, of course, we all know that spending is important, but it's how you do it. And the Bible says wherever your treasure is, there's your heart.
Yes,
so I tell people all the time, it's funny, I was helping a couple recently, and the wife was saying, the husband doesn't love me. And he was like, what do you mean I don't love you? And he was like, look at all the stuff that I've given you. She said, you spend all of your time on the golf course. And I said, all she's doing is she's coming from the Bible. She said, wherever you're spending your resources, that's where your heart is. So God says, so I can look at where your heart is based on where you're spending your money. So God was showing me my heart was in frivolous, irresponsible things that was not paying any dividends. It was not supporting my family. It was not growing me, the kingdom, or my wealth. So he started looking at that, and I had to look at myself. So I can go on, and again, but bottom line is these 5 things. So I tell folks, once we understand and you understand the management of these 5 things, giving it, saving it, investing it, spending it, and protecting it. Because protecting is what we talked about as well, and it's important to make sure that the moss will come around and they'll go after your money if you're not protecting it, if you don't have something built around it, a fortress. And God says your job is to make sure that you protect it as well. So all that to say, man, God showed me those things. He continuously shows me those things. But as much as every time I put more effort in it, he continuously increases me because he says, I can trust you. He looks at me like that elderly gentleman looked at his 2 sons. He looked at me and said, you used to be on that side of irresponsible, and I couldn't give it to you. Now you're on this side that you've earned it, and I'll give you more than enough. So that's where he is. That's what it is.
Listen, this has been rich. I told you all that we're doing this because in every area of your life, I want you to be healthy, and this is foundational stuff. So I need y'all to save this video, watch it again with your notepad out. What do you need to do with every dollar? What are the 5 things you can do with your finances? And what are some of those traps, right? I need you to reach out to that pinned email address, be a part of the consumption trap challenge to start to shift some things in your life. Most importantly, this is all about total life stewardship. And so I really want you to be aware of that. Sean, man, thank you so much for stopping through at the checkpoint and dropping all of this crazy knowledge. This is what we're here to do, to build you in every possible area. So thank you so much. And like I said, when y'all hear it's conference season and I'm bringing Sean out to do something, y'all better be here and be ready to take some notes. But thanks for tuning into the checkpoint. Again, Saturday, hop on afnbc.org for another edition of Family Ties as we're starting a new series from the life of Daniel for the entire family, from the babies all the way up to the grown folk, different lessons and conversations so you can come together and discuss them as a family. And then Sunday morning, make sure you're tuned in to Antioch Unplugged. Now, I need y'all to tune in early. I'm going to share some information with you right before we start service, and I need you to hear what it is. So y'all be asking me a million questions over the next couple of weeks. So y'all tune in early so y'all can hear what it is that I need to share with you. But thank y'all so much for tuning in. Again, share this video. Continue this conversation. This is our way of checking in on you to make sure that you're healthy, not just spiritually, but mentally, emotionally, and in this case, fiscally. So I love you. God bless you. And we'll talk to you again soon.